Good evening, everyone. This is Mr.TrueAudio, and in this story you'll be getting ready to hear what is actually based on a true event I personally encountered that took place on July 9th into the midnight hour of July 10th, 2017. Just for clarity, this is not a creepypasta, and this story is 100% based on a true experience. I never really thought about speaking open about this particular situation, however, getting back into the swing of things and creepy and scary content, I felt as if this would be a nice addition to this channel, and that this story I will be sharing would raise some understanding and awareness about never letting your guard down or being a complete buffoon like I was in this scenario. Not only will I be sharing this experience with you, I actually came across some of the messages I sent to my girlfriend that very night about what I had encountered, and I will be including them as I read aloud my experience in this video. I do apologize if the format of this story might seem somewhat vague and not very detailed, but given the traumatizing nature of this situation, I did my very best to sit down and recollect what I went through and how I felt and what exactly I could remember. So, having said that, it's time to hop in and go for a drive. On one unsettling night that is forever jarred into my memory ever since this event occurred. This was during a period of time long before I'd ever considered my driver's license. My bicycle was my everywhere go-to. My legs were about in the best condition as could ever be, even though despite many people thought I was crazy for some of the distances I would go. This event goes back to the summer of 2017. Me and my fiance at the time was in the dating phase, or honeymoon phase if you must. I wanted to pretty much be wherever she was and spend as much time with her as I could, and it was always a commitment to my closest loved ones that I would never make distance an issue because of the fact I was a pretty confident soul riding my bike everywhere I went. Didn't really fear anything, not for my safety or not for my well-being at the time. I was only 19, so why would that ever cross my mind? However, one night out of a million changed my perspective on the way I look at my safety and perhaps my personal beliefs on what we call fear of the unknown. In short, here's my story. This event occurred at the midnight hour of July 10th, 2017. I had just finished seeing my girlfriend and it was time to head home. My girlfriend and her mother had always expressed the worry of me getting hurt or something bad happening upon me leaving very late at night, so it was a bit of a routine to leave at least around 10 p.m. or 11 p.m. So like usual, I would grab my bike and talk to my girlfriend outside of her apartment for about a good 15-20 minutes before leaving. Having said that, I got my smooches and hugs in and parted my way from her and began to head home en route like usual. I must admit though, there were certain sections of the whole ride that made me feel uneasy, but that was still in some of the better parts of the neighborhood. I always had to bike past the golf courts and bike past certain dark areas. This was also still during a period of time when popular creepypasta stories like Jeff the Killer or Slenderman was still going around and being passed around on the internet. So every time I rode past the golf course, I could only imagine one of those godforsaken creatures chasing after me. However, uneasiness aside, it was still a routine and it was still just a temporary discomfort every time. I was making my way through and moseying around like usual, but for some reason, that night specifically, for some odd reason, I decided to shortcut through another neighborhood close to home, and it would shoot me to the straight crossroad that would lead me right home. Since I knew Waters Avenue was a breeze to cross at nighttime, I figured, why not? Needless to say, I continued on forward and found myself across Waters, and it was a simple straight shot home as I intended. As usual, I had acknowledged a few dark areas, which this time around did not appear the same feeling as just temporary discomfort. In fact, some particular feeling of unease, like shivered my body in a very odd manner. In my head, I'm thinking, okay, we do this all the time, let's just pedal forward. Dreadfully, this is where I begin to bike past an empty plot of land, which at one time used to reside in an old wooden house that an old church member of ours lived at when I was just a kid. I began going past and I began to hear what sounded like children singing in the far distance, but also sounded very distorted at the same time, and it definitely did not appear like a happy-go-lucky children's song. It was almost as if some sort of chant, and it sounded like a radio in the distance. I could not make out what was being said or sung. However, this activated my fight or flight mode. As I began to start pedaling faster, once I noticed the sounds, I only faintly remember it looking as if there was a group of people on that dark piece of land trying to approach me. But I genuinely cannot remember exactly what it was that I saw. I only vaguely remember that there being some small white lights in the distance. As I explained before, I never had concerns for my safety at that time, but I've also never been approached by someone or people to that regard. Obviously, I was able to bike fast enough in time to evade whatever that might have been, but I knew just a few houses down, I was still approaching another old wooden house that still resided on the corner, so I only continued to pedal faster as if I were expecting more to happen. Fortunately, I got past that section of the neighborhood and I was just about home. Soon as I got there, I dropped my bike and instantly ran inside the house, where my mom and sister was sitting and wondering what was going on with me. I had tried to explain to my mother that whatever I saw, I could barely explain, and just told them that I heard something and saw something in the distance that sounded very evil-like on the far side of our street, and my mom believed it. However, she had a good laugh after hearing me talk about how much I pedaled off as fast as I did. My sister, however, was a bit frozen after she heard what I was explaining. She began to tell me that she knew of some people in the neighborhood that would do things in abandoned houses or properties within the neighborhood, and that an old friend of hers actually took her to one where she instantly fled when she knew what she was coming across. Later that night, once I got settled in and calmed down, I messaged my girlfriend to let her know of the situation that I went through. Messages I still have to this day. Looking back on it now, to be completely honest with you, for something that happened so brief and so spontaneous, I still get chills to my bones when thinking of that experience. I guess you could say this was my first time experiencing why and what people are anxious of and afraid of when we talk about fear of the unknown. Whether or not this was a group of people being foolish or trying to gang up or attack me, or if this was just simply something supernatural. However, the shivers and goosebumps still remind me that I no longer take my safety for granted. Some events can be identified, but there are still quite a few that are left as an unknown mystery, unidentified. We may never know.